We, Among Fools. By Sony Kazim. Brought to you by X the Storyteller. Henry peered across the courtyard. A crow perched on the branch of a maple tree. It swooped down and clasped an insect.
Maybe I am the one that fails. Maybe England dies with me,
he said, posture crooked on a stone bench, and pressed her mouth on his shoulder. The double embroidery of a family crest felt piercing. She reached for his hand, her touch unnoticeable to him.
No one can understand,
said Henry.
My silence offers more understanding than what I can say.
At least there is comfort in hearing your voice.
Henry stood up. His knees slightly buckled and the crow focused on his giant frame, a cricket locked and squirming in its jaw. They proceeded down a path. The dew of plants glistened from the creeping sun. Distance onwards darkened by the shadow of the keep tower.
Have your feelings waned for me?
Anne asked.
No,
said Henry.
I'm between adverse sides.
If they do, end this. I will understand.
Henry's pace lessened to a halt on the sodded trail. The pulse on his hand thumped forcefully against hers. The grip tightened hard.
Henry?
She asked.
Do you understand my silence? The answer I have given?
Yes.
Red rubber balls sprawled and bounced on the marbled floor. The juggler's face covered in warm milk. He stood there, unable to move. William took a second glass jug and poured on his head until draining, then he ran out the wooden gate, into the outer bailey. Henry's laughter roared through the great hall.
Gander at him,
said Catherine.
He is similar to stone from embarrassment.
Thomas, pick up the balls,
said Henry. Thomas lowered his head and wept.
Do not cry in front of the Queen,
said Henry.
Pick them up.
A guard chuckled.
Is Thomas's humiliation comedic?
asked Catherine. The guard stopped. His torso straightened. Thomas bowed down violently, milk splattered on the ground, and then he scurried to the gallery chamber.
You must forgive Thomas,
said Catherine.
Do not consider their disobedience seriously. They're fools.
William needs to be admonished.
He's a fellow of jest.
William's infinitely mischievous,
said Catherine.
The other performers fear him.
His comedy is for subtler minds.
That comedy is disturbing and I am not in favor.
He is my fool.
Henry, elbows flaring, pressed on the chair's manchettes to lift himself. He motioned for a guard to gather the balls and then commanded another for a maid. He left to the barracks tower. Catherine stayed behind, sitting in silence. Her stomach spasmed in pain and rivulets of hot sweat coated her face. A maid escorted her back to the bedroom. On the walls the work of artisans time has not yet honored. Mahogany would bedeck the floor, great baubles of gold and bejeweled treasures, and sheets of silk covered the large bed where Catherine rested, weak and pale-colored. The maids brought her water and one flapped a fan eagerly. A great figure stood motionless at the door, mouth muttering some scripture.
Worse?
Henry asked the maid coming out. The Queen shall get better. Henry entered the bedroom and sat on a cushioned chair.
Damn Thomas,
he mumbled. He went to the buttery in the lower chambers. William, dressed in a casual tan doublet, makeup no longer obscuring his face, noticed him while near a far trestle table. He waved. Henry waved back. William was thin but his height far greater than Henry's and he struggled to position himself on the trestle bench as they both sat down with goblets. A bowl of fruit was brought by a servant and Henry shoved the grapes into his mouth. William watched, grinning. He slouched over to drink from the goblet, his spine an unnatural bend. Hip bones protruded out like necrotic wings.
Are you suffering?
asked William.
I know I am,
said Henry, gulping bits of fruit.
It could be worse.
Oh, William.
You could be boring.
Henry smirked.
Very good.
Can sense a tremendous veil of a pale tinge cast upon you.
My wife has not yet borne me a son. As you know, her nerves are frenzied. I'm greatly burdened with this.
William stroked his chin.
Seems to have grown in your gut.
A decent jab. My weight has grown, yes?
May be serious.
You may.
You at the Queen, at the priests, at the courts, the chickens, the pigs, at Hosanna the highest. Ascertain amply that your appetite accrues far above what food affords.
What do you say?
You possess plenty prospects for a son.
Cannot bear a bastard,
Henry said.
Envision one man emptied of words to describe their home. Is there a home?
Physically,
But it is not a home.
it is their home.
But it would not be called home because he has not that word.
Then any words he calls it is the same.
But the man has no words to call it.
What do you tell me?
Lost the plot.
You can be an awful imbecile.
Ah,
Imbecile. Idiot.
if you did not have those words,
Buffoon. Ass. Dullard. Dunce. Clod.
at those?
Oh, any self-same drivel.
Now, what is a bastard?
Fatherless child.
But if no word, what is it?
Nothing. Just a child.
Go further.
said William.
One can always go further.
What is all this?
A lesson.
Of which I have not learned a thing.
You have not the words to know what you learned.
William.
Said Henry, knocking on the table.
My wife suffers for me. Your queen suffers.
Queen suffers double the king. Have seen her oft inside church. She prays, she converses long with priests.
She may be pregnant again, and that is the reason for her state.
Therefore, she prays for heir.
We are not on fair terms.
Said Henry.
She is aware of my another reason for her state.
What can the other think?
Henry tilted his head, eyes fixed on the arched ceiling, and then he said,
I ask myself if I make her out of my wishes, or if she is truly the woman I know her to be.
My eighth.
Say,
What is different betwixt the two?
Henry said nothing.
For strong health, we should give ourselves service to be fools.
at times your conversations tire me, William.
Apologize.
Fetch me my victuals.
Yes, my eighth.
During the night he laid beside Catherine, unable to sleep. The kingdom was quiet, guards sleeping in the barracks, horses and other animals settled in the barns. Outside William sauntered under the pale moonlight. He withdrew a small pipe from a waist pouch. The smoke swirled like phantoms dancing amidst his head. He studied the courtyard space, eyeing measurements, gauging distances. Ornate glass of the chapel reflected a garden atrium sheltered by limestone pillars whereon plant life morphed and twined like basilisks spiraling to the sun. Awaiting in the narthex was a priest. He accompanied Catherine to an aisle. They prayed. They cited verses and counted rosary beads and kissed holy portraits. She wept. Henry met Catherine in the chapel. Then they walked among lilac shrubs and wild grass, but soon Catherine wished to be alone. She ventured back to the atrium with 2 guards. William juggled for a group of soldiers under a canopy, and he played card tricks and told jokes, and the soldiers laughed. He noticed Catherine wandering. He followed her in zagged patterns as she exited from the chapel and into a chamber hall, guards no longer present.
Did the father mention me?
He asked. She turned, his stature like a tower clad in bright yellow.
You know I visited the church.
No. Don't know that. Merely asked if father mentioned.
Are you following a queen?
Should be peeled at baked by the sun.
You are vile. Henry will know of this.
No. What do you know?
I know you are a damned fool.
To some a hero.
To other fools as you.
That which separates fools at heroes is not set by character but by conclusion.
Madness.
Never claim not to be, which is virtue.
My king will have you thrown out.
What'll do you for ye king?
Stop talking with me.
Smell it on your breath.
Yelled William.
The smell of warrant at mulberry wine.
She slapped him. A fine white powder burst in the air.
Oh.
May God look down on you in mercy.
Shall look up only after suckled fully from God's bosom.
Blasphemy.
And what is birthing one inutile daughter at 6 stillborns?
She slapped him again. She had to rise on her toes to reach him. The white makeup wore away and his concave cheek reddened and Catherine's palm grew numb. William stepped back as her arms flailed and he clasped his face and whimpered.
No, please, please. I'm but a fool,
he said with tears and then ran. Henry entered the bedroom and unclothed his robe. He tried to sleep until Catherine pushed creaking the dense wood door.
Henry.
My dear?
He said, rising up.
William will be punished.
All right.
He let out a gasp and laid back down.
Henry.
William will be punished. Do not scream. It's not good for your state.
He is vile, Henry. The things he has told.
He is vile, correct. Worry not of him any longer.
William must be exiled from the castle.
He'll sleep with the pigs with whom he belongs.
Catherine undid her dress and put on a nightgown and settled on a far side of the bed. Henry assured her, and they both succumbed to a dark silence. She receded to a slumber whereas Henry could not, the engine of his brain still toiling. In the deeper hours he awoke frantic, forcing air into his lungs. He sat on the edge of the bed trying to quiet his breath and then lumbered out the bedroom. Henry placed both arms on the sill of a low gallery window looking out the courtyard and inhaled as if the air was curative. By the view there were two figures around shrubbery half visible by the radial glow of lanterns pinned to wooden posts, and he squinted to examine them. They were cloaked. Henry recognized the robes on one, the feminine fashion, the amber hair like strands of flame peeking out even amongst all that vast cipher of night. During the early morning Henry inquired servants, chamberlains, the steward, cooks, guards, on the whereabouts of William. None had seen him. He entered William's chamber and the interior was desolate. In the mess hall where infantry ate, a fiddle was heard and 3 men gathered listening to the melody. William stopped playing when Henry dismissed them. They stared at each other in a quizzical manner.
Do you know Anne Boleyn?
A balloon?
Anne Boleyn, the daughter of the Earl of Wiltshire.
Pray not.
Was it you with her in the court garden?
Maybe. What was she giving me?
Answer verily.
Nay. Not me. A dense night can also turn the cows black.
I did not say it was night.
You have told me prior how you seldom sleep at wander. The dark alone can soil your perception. Tell me of the night terror which did beset.
William does know me well,
said Henry.
However, these dreams are musings of a worried mind at rest.
Yet, tell me.
Henry handled a chair, sat and clasped his hands together, and said,
So, I was a child with my mother and father in a home of wood, boarded, and no way out. Therein we did our duties, many things such as ride horses, mend armour, weapons, all in this house. There was a scratching in the ceiling and the beak of a bird pierced through the wood. I crawled to it and tried looking out the hole, but I'd only see light, so I worked my fingers, widening it with my strength, and the hole cracked open and ceiling and walls collapsed under. I heard a terrible cry from my father.
Found the meaning.
Henry motioned for him to stop.
If it means anything, it's a premonition of coming attack. But I do not have temperament for battle. It is meaningless.
My 8th, am perceptive of misery, et am obliged as court jester to unanchor you from that insufferable steed. None are so witless to offend this kingdom. The dream is not a premonition, it is a sign that the fortress of your soul is as powerless as ye inheritors. Circumstance rendered misfortune, but a king must write blighted fate, for the rightful nature of royalty is that which determines its own. Yet the blood binding you to the throne has answered accordingly through auspice of dream.
Can it be so?
God imbued comedy in man as antidote. Shall do my duty.
Duty?
Duty.
Go on.
There will be carnival in the courtyard.
Absurd,
said Henry, facing away from William.
Carnival is a Lent festivity.
It will be tailored for a king. Can acquire band of fools from higher parts. An expert band. Arrange tapestry, meals, events, riot for a king, a new Lupercalia for the loftiest king England ever did incubate.
I weary of this, for Catherine demands you gone from the castle.
Make myself unknown. It is celebration above the frivolous spikes of enmity.
Celebrating?
Life, your noble life, my 8th, old Greece shall crawl from the crypt in witness. Surely superb spirits seek such spectacles. A mighty Emperor Caligula contrived ye long orgies. Yet as Christians we will be guarded by the prudence of clergy whose dictums trail from forever youthful wisdom of Aristotle.
Yet, if those pangs in you do not yield, at that troubling sea not quelled, then leave me a mouldering edible for worms, as Catherine pleases.
Stentorian trumpets resounded through the yard, long tables adorned with meats and drink, merry men chanting songs, and poets recited ancient stanzas interpreting the New World. Henry greeted a band of fools. They bowed and gave praise. They dressed in myriad colors, performed dances and skits, spoke in metaphors, their presence like a neoteric species. Giant horses frolicked over smoke plumes and jolted heads in amusement, rumbling the ground, and a group of drunkards surmised an army was sallying towards them. A joust for the king, a man yelled, "Aye! A show!" A steward helped Henry up a horse that moved like the wild, and it was not yet broken, and the animal neighed as his bulk dropped on its back. Armor on him fortified by heavy-gauge steel, gleaming like a beacon, festooned by ebony tracings of mythic scenes on the chest plate. "These men are a gale's pitch to their speech," the steward said while strapping Henry's feet to the stirrups. Another man brought him the lance.
All the better.
The lance was white with strips of gold declining to the tip, and it felt cumbersome when Henry held it in the pocket of his arm. All around the faces of soldiers, eyes lustrous, roaring, some scarred by wars fought for the king, the civility of them inertial as their bodies proceeded to the tilt area. The combatant readied on the opposite side. The game marshal established rules and conduct. Henry's acranch shield strongly fastened, heat in the armor near searing. A horn blew and the 10 sequins kicked their feet and Henry whipped the reins on his, and it trotted, then accelerated, nearly crashing into the tilt barrier, and the other rider like a giant gray comet hurled to him. The two met at midpoint but missed each other. They prepared for the second round. The marshal sounded a horn. Henry's horse galloped wildly and its muscles convulsed. He let go of the reins to lift his shield, body bending to the left side, squeezing both legs on the horse's ribcage. A lance like an ascalon for fabled beasts struck the center of his torso, and he dropped to the hard ground, armor clattering a twisted noise. The horse continued onwards, the kings unhorsed, the marshal and a small company unfastened straps of the chest piece. A hole had incurved in the plate. Henry squirmed in pain. His left leg in odd alignment. "My lord, his lance did not break," said the marshal. His lance did not break. From a balcony Catherine saw Henry splayed on the soil. A pain burst at the frontal point in her skull, heartbeat manic, and she grasped a door frame as energy in her limbs discharged. Chambermaids shouted and rushed in fear. They carried her to a bower room and a physician entered and excused everyone in order to study her condition. He plopped a heavy leather satchel on the bed and removed his hood. Catherine's eyelids fluttered. Then they remained open.
"William,
My dear,
where am I?"
she asked.
"Why do you wear those clothes?"
does the name of Boleyn mean something to you, my dear?
"It means a whore."
Thus, it is.
"Is she responsible for you?"
A thin braided rope was removed from the satchel. Her eyes wide and burning like cobalt flames.
"God, I am bearing child."
Omnibus viventibus est responsibilis,
said William. He coiled the rope around his knuckles. The skin whitened.
"Abomination. You will hang."
William kneeled down to the bed. She was haggard, heart murmuring. He double knotted the rope and then turned to draw it over the shoulder. She pounded fists on his back, his head, face spasming, legs thrashing on the cotton sheets. Then he stood. Thank you for listening to We Among Fools. Written by Sony Kasim and brought to you by X the Storyteller. Starring Christopher Gunning as Henry VIII, additional voices by Play.ht. Visuals by Midjourney. Follow us on social media at X the Storyteller on X, formerly Twitter, or at X the Storyteller on Instagram. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, share and tell us which character you'd like to hear more about. All rights reserved. Unauthorized copying or reproduction of this production is prohibited.